So, hi, Dr. Evans. Lamitra Dismuke. I have my sponsor here, Mr. Philip Hammonds, and we're going to go ahead and have our conference for the self-evaluations that we completed on myself as the candidate. I'll go ahead and start. When I was looking over them both, I guess I start talking about the areas that I felt were a strength for me, and then we can talk about those areas that you saw as a strength for me, and then we'll look at those areas of growth and some things that we can do so that those can become areas of strength for me. Um, the two areas in which I scored myself the highest, and I look for, mainly fours and fives. Um, the first area was instructional leadership. I think that because of the role that I'm in, or the role that I have been in transitioning from teacher to teacher leader or in teacher support, and my role as a data support specialist, I do have a high skill set as far as being able to look at student achievement data, monitoring to see, how effective we are, as far as doing certain programs or having certain frameworks in place, and working with staff on what some instructional best practices would be to increase student achievement, as well as in providing some professional learning to teachers. Um, Another area that I thought was somewhat of a strength for me as well was in the area of human resources management. Um, I'm not at a point where I'm heavily involved in the hiring and bringing teachers within the school, but I think once those teachers have, been indoctrinated into our school environment, that I do a good job with, supporting them in their, things that they may need to move students forward. Um, kind of keeping a positive environment so that, they feel good about the work they're doing, and they're working at a place that they feel like they're, happy and working with. I think I do encourage teachers to take risks and not be afraid of trying new things. And I do work hard to encourage those that I see are making a positive difference in our school to remain here and to keep making a difference for students. So those are things that I saw as being a strength for me currently at the time.
Okay. So do you want me to, I guess, assess which areas I thought were strength? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I think that in terms of school climate, I thought that was a strength when you look at some of the sample indicators, the modeling, positive relationships. I think that when you look at how important relationships are to the culture and how that impacts the work and the performance of others, I certainly saw that as a strength in observing you during PLCs, observing you interacting with teachers, and also as we have our dialogues about what's going on in the building, and finding out this year in terms of some of the teachers that you've been mentoring and working with. I think that that is definitely a strength. Your demeanor, your professionalism definitely comes out and adds value to our school. And so when I look at that particular standard, I think that that's certainly an area of strength for you. I would say, kind of looking over it again, I will concur also in terms of human resource management. One of the things that we've tried to do here is, have collaborative interview panels and, do things a little bit differently, try to attract the right character of teacher. And I think, again, when you're talking about managing people, it's about relationships. And so while it may not be specific to some of those sample indicators that are listed, whether it's, the actual induction program, Go Tip, or, certainly you don't make recommendations, officially in terms of hiring and firing, but again, being part of the process, giving feedback on people, our discussions about what our needs are as it relates to different positions we may be hiring for. I think that, again, that's an area of strength. I think that, looking at, again, some of those sample indicators, sort of being a model for those things for others in the building, I think also speaks to that leadership standard.
Okay. things that I'm looking to definitely grow in prior to becoming a building level leader. Um, One area um, that I think where I scored myself a little bit lower was more so in the area of organizational management. I would like to continue to learn more about local policies, board policies, um, things that we have to be in alignment, in as a school, to ensure that we're managing it properly. I don't have a lot of experience with creating a budget. I understand them when I see them. I've gotten better with knowing what I see, especially since I've been in this Title I position. So I definitely get that. And serving on SGC, I'm learning a lot as well on the School Governance Council. But I would like to know more about not only with FTE, how much money we're gaining, how we discern what we spend on what. I know a lot of it goes to salary, but I would like to learn more about creating a budget and more of that organizational side of the school. Um, I also think another area that I think that I could also work with or just be I'm involved in the standard operations and the procedures in the school, but I don't think so. I don't think that I have been as involved as I could be with the planning as far as what are our standard operating procedures for our school? How are we going to, do this procedure? How are we going to do that? I would like to get more experience, or I think that I would, need to learn more about um, those processes and how we make our decisions with our, procedures and guidelines within the school.
So what standard was that?
That's standard 3,
Okay.
leaks 3.
Okay. Okay. Um, one of the things that I think, even for myself as a principal, I always tend to be more critical in terms of a leadership standard is the instructional leadership one. I think that's probably where we had greater, variance between our scores. And it's not that you don't possess those skills; there's not evidence there. One of the things that I've learned since being here from my initial, supervisor, Dr. Fenoy, was really tying those to the results that we get. And so while we may have the skill, we may be implementing those things, we always want to connect that instructional leadership part to the results we're getting as a school. And so when we look at our scores from 15-16 to 14-15 to 16-17, we haven't made market gains in those areas. And so even with my own self-assessment that I do as part of the LEAPS evaluation, instructional leadership, I didn't rate myself very high. It's not that I don't believe in myself or it's not that I don't have the skills. I do. It's just that, okay, how have those skills impacted the instruction and the achievement in our building? And so that's one that, I tend to be more critical on myself and also with other leaders. And so I think that was worth mentioning because especially because one of the things that we have to keep in mind is sometimes we do this as, okay, how do I feel about myself right now, right? Versus, okay, based upon what I'm doing, where do I think I'll be, right? And so and how much has recent performance played into how I'm scoring this. And so I think that what I would prefer in terms, and this is for myself, but it's also kind of explaining my rationale in terms of some of the scoring, is where I'd rather underrate myself and push harder, and then the results are better than to overrate and then, okay, wait a minute, because honestly, I believe I see myself as all threes
Mm-hmm.
or four or five, three or higher, certainly,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of instructional leadership.
Mm-hmm.
But where are the results to support that?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd rather, be more critical now and maybe, work harder, push a little bit harder,
Mm-hmm.
and then, okay, now the results are there.
Yeah.
Okay, boom.
Well, I think that process too probably helps us to discern where we want to spend our energy and time, because it's very easy to get caught up in the work of
Hmm.
the school. But if it's not tied to results, like, okay, I'm doing this because this data tells us this, and now as a result of doing this, what has changed.
Yeah.
So I think it helps to kind of align your work and what you do.
Hmm.
Because I do know that I'm one of those people, and this sometimes works as a strength and a weakness for me. I'm one of those people that always will jump in wherever I'm needed,
Yeah.
but at sometimes that can take you off alignment,
Right.
from what your focus should be.
Right.
So it's pros and cons for being that type of person, but I think that it definitely helps in the area to tie it to the impact that I'm having. Can I say that as a result of me being in this role, or the decisions that I make as a leader, do I have the results for it to
Yeah.
decide whether or not it's a practice we need to continue, or if it's something that needs to change, or we
Yeah.
need to just throw away.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. So what other areas, or for the areas that I consider to be weaknesses, or the areas that you saw are areas for growth, I should say, are some things that we can start with as far as my work? What are some things that we can?
Well, I think you're very in tune. I think you're very reflective of your work, your performance, and and how it lends itself to overall the student achievement in the building. Specifically, some things that you pointed out that we can address and work toward. Number one is, how do we narrow your focus,
Mm-hmm.
and what are the priorities as it relates to your work and student achievement. And so I think that. And we had some talks about that as it relates to Title One, some specific
Mm-hmm.
things with Title One, and some other things. So we will certainly take a look at that. Again, particularly as it relates to directing your role in terms of the data. How do we follow through to make sure that, okay, these things are getting done, so that we can have an accurate picture about where our students are, where our instruction is, and how can we predict our performance prior to April getting here. I think the other thing is some of the you mentioned standard 3 and some of the planning. That's just a matter of me sort of giving you the opportunity to sit on those things, to actually do some of those things. For example, you'll certainly be with me during the budget planning this year. And so when February rolls around and we're going to sit down with the finance department, we'll take a look at that. And we don't have to wait till then, but certainly, I want you to have that hands-on, firsthand experience with it. And so what we can do between now and then is, I'll actually show you, okay, here's how you access the budget. Here's what ours looks like. Here's how and where we're spending our money. And then also, again, how do you tie that spending to results? That's one thing that, especially, in Title One, is they want you to tie, here's what you put in your plan. Your money has to align with your plan. And so it really takes a level of focus and intentionality to have that aligned, right? And so I think that those things is just a matter of, okay, what does your leader allow you to experience? And for me, I'll let you experience the full gambit. You tell me what to slow down.
Okay.
But because that is just simply the best way, right? Is to have that with guidance and with support. Say, let me show you. This is what you have to do. And because systems change from one district to the other, but the thinking behind it, there's some consistencies no matter what district you're working in, no matter what state you're working in. For example, when you look at scheduling, what's the number one thing you think about when you schedule? It's student needs, period. You can have all this wonderful programming, but if it doesn't match what your kids need, you're wasting your time. What do you think about in terms of in budgeting? Number one is people. Do you have the right people in the right place? right? And so those things are consistent no matter where you go, and it's that thinking you have to have, regardless of what the application may be that you use.
Okay. Well, I think I know what next steps I can make to improve in these areas, and I look forward to the support that I know you're going to give me as I work on my areas of growth.
So while we're doing the feedback,
Okay.
um, what is something that I can improve on in terms of providing your support?
Mm, I would say probably just additional feedback. Like I really um, am critical of myself and my role. But I think that the only way, and I'll be totally honest with you, up until this point, um, I definitely take pride in what I do, but most often I have been given positive accolades, and I don't take, I'm saying that to say that I want to hear what I need to improve
Right.
upon. Because, for one, I think that's the only way we grow and get better. I don't want to become stagnant. I don't want to become just, where I'm here. I actually want to grow. But up until this point in my career, I have not received a lot of that. So I'm learning how to receive the feedback as well as take that and improve upon what I'm doing. So I'm in the beginning stages of going through that process, but I'm very willing, what I'm saying, because I want to
Yeah.
grow. It's new to me to get feedback that may not necessarily be all positive, but I think that's the only way I'm going to push through and become a even better leader. So I welcome that. So the more feedback, I think the better it's going to make me.
Now let me tell you this. First of all, that's very insightful, and two, the one thing that effective leaders, principals, teachers, anybody does that really contributes to their level of effectiveness is reflection. And that point of reflection right there just speaks volumes. I know it's still positive stuff, but we'll get to the critical things off camera. But that is what really makes the difference, and that's one thing I think is definitely a strength, is that you are critical and you are mindful of, okay, where do I need to grow, where can I grow, and I appreciate you having that level of candor.
Because I really do. I like to be highly effective, and I really think I do reflect a lot. When I went through national board, that kind of taught me that process of how to reflect and think constantly about the work that you're doing. So I constantly do it, and I'm always thinking about how can I become more effective, how could I be more efficient, how could I be, like I'm constantly thinking about that when I work. So the feedback is definitely something that I'm looking forward to grow even more. But that's really the main thing, and just having the experiences like we talked about, more experience with those organizational things, as it pertains to the budgeting. So just the experience of being able to go through it and see how it works. That's what I'm hoping to gain.
There's plenty to share with that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hammonds. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right.
Take care of Miss Dismuke for me.